Hello, second graders, and welcome to today's math lesson. Today's math lesson is 11.11, which is problem solving and equal shares. So in this lesson today, we're going to be asking ourselves and thinking of the answer to the essential question, which is how can drawing a diagram help when solving problems about equal shares? So we're not only going to be finding out what equal shares means, but we're also going to be figuring out how we can use drawings and diagrams to help us solve problems that are about equal shares. So let's find out what equal shares is and how we can solve problems that are about equal shares.
Well, hi, friends. Jay and I have been watching some kids play soccer. They're taking a break so they can have a snack. One of the kids brought 2 sandwiches to share. Click the picnic table to take a closer look. The 2 sandwiches are squares and the same size. The coach told the girl that the sandwiches will be cut into equal shares. I wonder what that looks like. Come on, let's learn more about equal shares.
There are 2 sandwiches that are the same size. Each sandwich is divided into halves, but the sandwiches are cut differently. How might the 2 sandwiches be cut? Asking questions will help us solve the problem. What do we need to find?
All right, so let's see what we need to find.
We need to find how the sandwiches might be cut. What information do we need to use?
So remember, there's 2 sandwiches, right? But they're going to be cut differently. So that's what we're trying to find out. What do we need to find? How are we going to cut these sandwiches 2 different ways, even though they're the same size? This one is going to ask, what information do I need to use? So let's see what information we need in order to figure out how we're going to cut the sandwiches differently.
There are 2 sandwiches. Each sandwich is divided into halves. Now we're ready to solve the problem.
Okay, so again, we're finding out how the sandwiches might be cut, and the information that we already have that we can use to help us is that there are 2 sandwiches and each sandwich is divided into halves. That's the very important part right there, is that it's divided into halves. Not thirds, not fourths, but halves, which means 2 equal pieces. So let's see how they show us to solve the problem.
Let's use 2 squares to represent the 2 sandwiches. Click the first square to show a way to cut it into halves.
So just take a second to think, how could you cut this sandwich into halves? What's one way that you'd be able to cut this sandwich into halves? I'm going to give you about maybe 10 seconds to think of a way, and then we're going to see how they decide to cut it. All right, and let's see if one of the ways that you were thinking of is the same thing that they were thinking of.
The square is divided into 2 equal parts, so it's cut into halves. Now click the other square to show a different way to cut it into halves.
All right, so they decided to cut this sandwich into halves by putting a line right down the middle, 2 equal pieces. That is an effective way to cut it into halves. Let's think of another way that they might be able to cut this sandwich right here into halves. Again, we're trying to think of a different way. So what would be another way that you can cut that sandwich into halves? I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to think about that. All right, and let's see how they decide to cut it.
This square is also divided into 2 equal parts, so it's also cut into halves. Both squares show 2 equal parts, but the parts in one square are a different shape than the parts in the other square.
So if you were to cut this sandwich like the way they did it here, right, you would have 2 kind of rectangular pieces of the sandwich, right? Again, same size, same shape, so those are equal parts, right? So this one is cut into halves. This one is also cut into halves, but it's a little bit differently. The pieces are now in a triangle shape, right? So still cutting the same whole into halves, just cutting it a different way, and therefore making the pieces look a little bit different as well. So we have a sandwich that is cut into halves in triangular pieces, and we have a sandwich that's cut into halves in rectangular pieces. I don't know if they're going to talk about it in the next part, but another way that you could also cut a sandwich into halves like this is if you take a line going across the square like this, right? Because you would still have two equal pieces there as well.
Marquis has 2 sheets of paper that are the same size. He wants to cut each sheet into thirds. What are 2 different ways he could cut the paper? Select one way Marquis could cut the paper into thirds. Then click check.
All right, so let's look at each one here. Again, we're trying to cut it into thirds. So for this one, I count 1, 2, 3, 4 equal pieces. But remember, thirds are 3 equal pieces. So therefore, this one cannot be what Marquis is trying to do, right? Because he cut it into 4 pieces. Now let's go to this one. I do see 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3. So that is cut into thirds, but I'm not sure if it's cut into equal pieces. This middle piece here seems a lot thicker than it does compared to some of the other pieces in this one. So I'm not entirely sure if that one is cut into equal pieces. Now let's look at this one. 1, 2, 3. I do see 3 pieces, and this one looks a little bit more equal to me. Each piece here looks about the same size and about the same shape. So I am going to click on this one, and we're going to see if we are correct.
Good job! This
Right.
is one way to cut the paper into thirds. Here's the second sheet of paper. Select another way Marquis could cut the paper into thirds.
All right, so let's look at this one now. So again, cut into 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, but they're not equal and they're definitely not the same shape, right? This one kind of looks like it's part of like a rectangle, or maybe even like a trapezoid kind of shaped, and then we have 2 triangles. So that one right there we know is not the right way to cut it into thirds because it's not equal pieces, right? This one over here does look like equal pieces. It is cut into 1, 2, 3 pieces, and they all seem to be the same size. They all seem to be the same shape. So this one is a possibility. Let's just check the other one. So this one is also cut into 3 pieces, but this piece right here is not the same size as these 2 pieces right here. So this one can also not be cut into thirds because it's not cut into equal pieces. So therefore, our answer is going to be this one right here in the middle.
Good job! This is another way to cut the paper into thirds. How are the thirds of the 2 sheets of paper alike? A third of each sheet is one of the 3 equal parts. How are the thirds different? The thirds are different shapes. Let's try another problem. Shanice has 2 pieces of cloth that are the same size. She needs to divide each piece into fourths. What are 2 different ways she could divide the cloth? Select a way Shanice could divide the cloth into fourths.
All right, so for this one, I'm just going to give you about like 10 seconds to think of which one you think it is. Remember, we're looking for 4 equal pieces, right? Because she needs to divide each piece into fourths, which would be 4 equal pieces. So take 10 seconds to think about which one you think it is, and then I'll reveal the answer to you after. All right, so the one that I see that is cut into fourths, which means 4 equal pieces, is the one right here in the middle. So I'm going to click that one, and we're going to check.
Great job! This is one way to divide the cloth into fourths. Now select another way Shanice could divide the cloth into fourths.
All right, so take another 10 seconds and think about which other one you think can be cut into fourths. Okay, and so if you guessed this one, you are correct because this one's cut into 4 equal pieces. This one does not have equal pieces, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, which is not fourths. So the answer would be this one right here.
Good job! This is another way to divide the cloth into fourths. You've chosen 2 ways to divide a cloth into fourths. Here are 2 more ways.
All right, so good job. If you guessed these two, good job, and pat yourselves on the back for guessing them correctly because you did a great job.
Now let's practice with the personal math trainer.
All right, let's do it. So let's go to the personal math trainer and let's see what we can work out together. Okay, so number 1 says, Aaron has 2 ribbons that are the same size. What are 2 different ways she can divide the ribbons into thirds? Select 2 ways Aaron can divide the ribbons. So 2 ways that she can divide them into thirds, which means 3 equal pieces. So I'm going to go through each one. So A, 1, 2, 3, it is cut up into 3 equal pieces, all right, and they do look the same size, so they do look equal. So I'm going to click A as one of the options. This one over here, 1, 2, 3, does have 3 pieces, but they're not all the same size and they're not all the same shape. Okay, so I'm not going to click that one. C, though, is cut into 1, 2, 3 pieces, and they do seem like they are the same size and they're the same shape. So this one also is cut into thirds or 3 equal pieces. So I'm going to click that one, but I'm just going to check D just to make sure. And so D, again, is cut into 3 pieces. These 2 pieces look the same size and shape, but this one does not. So they're not all equal. So I think our answers for this one are A and C. Let's check our answer.
Well done!
All right, and we got it correct, so good job. And we're going to move on to our next one. So it says, Mrs. Lee cut 2 sandwiches into thirds. How many equal shares does she have? So equal shares is another way of just saying equal pieces. So in other words, if she were to cut up 2 sandwiches into thirds, how many equal shares does she have? So basically how many pieces will each person get? So Mrs. Lee cut 2 sandwiches into thirds. So she cuts 1 sandwich into thirds. She has 3 pieces. And then she cut the other sandwich into thirds as well. So how many equal shares does she have? Well, 3 pieces from the first sandwich and 3 pieces from the second sandwich are 6. So she has 6 equal shares.
Fantastic!
All right. All right, nice job. And so that is the personal math trainer that we are going to do together. All right, and so now what you guys can do.
Let's practice with the personal math trainer.
Yep, so now what you guys can do is you guys can log on to Think Central and you can do the assignment for 11.11, equal shares. If you would like a little bit more practice and a little bit more extra help on this topic, you can look at the next video that I'm going to post, which shows me going through some of the slideshow slides on the Smart Notebook. So if you need a little bit of extra practice and a little bit extra help with this, watch that video and I will go into more in depth with that and do some more activities that can kind of help you better understand this topic. Okay, if you feel like you're ready to go and do the assignment for 11.11, then like I said, just log into Think Central and you can complete that assignment. Okay, my friends, thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.